Let's kick off this project with a little bit of some vocabulary, starting with our first word, which is silhouette. A silhouette is a dark shape or an outline of something or someone. There are no details inside of it. It's typically all just colored in black. For example, here are some silhouettes of some bunnies. You can tell they are all bunnies. We can see by the outline, but there are no details inside. It is just all colored in black. Our next vocab words are actually positive and negative space, and they go together. So we're going to take a look at an example of some paintings of some clouds to better understand positive space and negative space. Positive space is the main focus of the artwork, the subject. So you can see in this picture, it's the clouds. The negative space is all that empty space around them. Typically, it's either one solid color, it's just lacking in details, so that way your eye can focus on the positive space and not the negative space. Our next vocab word is notan. A notan, or often called a notan design, is a Japanese concept involving placement of light and dark elements. So in this example, we can see black as our dark, white as our light, and this line of symmetry is very important. When you create a notan design, you want to flip your item across that line of symmetry to create what is looking like a mirrored reflection. So anywhere they cut from that black square, they flipped it across that line of symmetry, and it now looks like a reflection. And our final vocab word is Zentangle. Zentangle is a method for drawing which promotes concentration and creativity, and it also involves creating lots of beautiful patterns and designs, typically just done in black and white. We will be using all of these vocab words in this project. All right, to get started on our project, you are going to get 2 sheets of paper. You're going to get a half sheet of white paper and a full-size sheet of colored paper. This is going to be the color of your choice from our available options, and we will be eventually gluing this down so it will take up half of the page. You should have a half and half design. So what you need to do first is I would go ahead, take your colored sheet of paper. On the side that is going to be the back of the paper, that is where we are going to write our name, our teacher's name, and our seat color and number. You can pause this video while everybody is getting that information on there. We will all get caught up. And then we are going to move on to our white paper. This is where we're going to be drawing our animal's silhouette. You want it turned tall portrait, not short landscape. And when you draw your animal, you want to stick to drawing in the center of the paper. If you do have the animal that comes down and touches to the bottom, that's okay. Like maybe you chose a giraffe, like just the neck and the head, and that's fine. But if you're gonna draw the whole silhouette, it needs to try to be in the center of the paper. And you don't want it to be teeny tiny, try to make it a little bit larger, but you should still have space left on the sides as well as at least on the top, maybe not on the bottom, but if you are sticking to the center, top and bottom. So I'm gonna show you what I mean by this. I'm gonna go ahead and sketch out my animal right here in the center. All right, and for my animal, I chose to do the toucan. I saw that one on our think sheet of some silhouette ideas and I really liked it. Remember, this is a silhouette. You should not have details on the inside. Like I don't need the eye, I don't need extra feathers, I don't need to draw on the wing. I just need the simple outline, like you took a picture of the bird and got rid of all the detail, just colored it all in black. But we are not gonna color it all in black. We are going to outline it with our Sharpie. So I'm gonna go ahead, outline over everything, erase my pencil line so I have one clean solid piece. We are going to be cutting this out. So please be mindful when you are drawing your animal. If you know it's hard for you to cut in some of these little small spaces, stick to an animal that has bigger details. Try not to do too many small things. I also opted to not do so many details down here for the foot for the sake of making it easier to cut out. So let me go ahead and trace all of this with Sharpie. And now you can see that it is one solid piece, almost like a cookie cutter of that animal. So think about it as just one solid piece. Now I did not go exactly on my pencil line, so this is when I would need to take my pink eraser, come back in, erase away any pencil lines. Now that it's clean, we are going to be doing our cutting to get our animal off of our paper. It is super important when you cut that you want to keep it as one cut. You are not coming back and trimming any extra little pieces off. It's one solid cut. So I'm gonna choose where I want to start. I see that I have just this little gap right here on the side, so this is a good starting point. Try to find the shortest point from one of your edges to where your animal starts. Like down here, if I was to go all the way from the bottom to the tip of the feet, that would be a long cut. So let's start on the beak of the toucan. So I'm going to cut in. I'm going to keep my scissors on the paper. I'm going to cut as best I can on my black line. If some of the black line is left on the paper, that's okay. We will hide that in later with some of our designs. So I am taking my time. I want to cut slow. I don't want to have to come back and do any trimming, or else it will mess up the no-tan design that we are going to be making. So going slow all the way around. I'm going to go ahead and skip forward to me having this completely cut out. All right, and we're down to that last little snip. So now you can see that I've completely cut my toucan out from my paper. I don't want these little pieces to tear. We are saving this entire piece. This is not a scrap piece to throw away. This is part of our design. So you should have one solid piece like you did a cookie cutter and took it right out. No trimming, no excessive going back and cutting. You need to keep it just like it is. It's like you took this piece and you just pulled it right out. We are going to take our blue paper where we wrote our name, our teacher's name, and our seat color number, flip it over to the blank side. And you're gonna choose if you want your toucan or your animal to go on this side or this side. And maybe you want it flipped. Maybe you would like this side or this side. It is totally up to you. I'm going to put my toucan on this side of the paper. Now remember, with a no-tan design, it's like you're taking that piece out, and instead of just shifting it over, you are going to like flip it. On your line of symmetry, you take your picture, you flip to the other side. So it should look like your animal is looking at a reflection of itself. So I have two parts. Does everyone see how I managed to take my cutout piece, one solid piece, I flip it over my line of symmetry, and I try to make sure it's matched up as best I can. Obviously, this is not matched up, so I want to try to make it look as balanced as possible. We are going to use our glue sticks to go ahead and glue these pieces in place. If you accidentally glue your paper off a little bit, leave it, it's okay. We can use the paper cutter to make nice, clean, even cuts, but definitely make sure your animal is matched up as best as possible. So using a glue stick to glue down both parts. I definitely recommend using a messy mat to help keep your paper and your page clean. So I'm gonna take my toucan paper using my glue stick. Make sure you're going all the way along the edges and being very careful not to tear your paper. If it tears, you're just gonna have to glue it back in place. So when I get closer up here, I'm not gonna get right up in those little details. I don't wanna risk pulling on them too close and they accidentally pull off. I'm gonna get a little bit right here. All right, so then I will flip it, line it up to the edge. Now this is a glue stick, so you do have time to like work with it. Line it up as best as I can. All right, and using my hands, I'm just gonna carefully smooth down and press all of my pieces in place. I can take my artwork off of my messy mat. And then I also like to do this tip. I flip it back over and I give it a back rub. Make sure it is all pressed flat. Easier to rub on this side since you have one solid paper. First, if you're trying to do that on this side, you might accidentally catch a little piece and pull it off. So just making sure all of it is flat. Now, I can flip it over and see where we use that little cut. It just hides itself in there, and we're definitely gonna be hiding it with a line in just a second. If you have any little pieces that are poking up now, this is when you can take your glue stick, just carefully put a little bit of glue and stick it in place. We're gonna do the same thing now with our toucan. Remember that we are flipping it to be looking at itself, our no-tan design. And I can start gluing. So I'm going to be using my messy mat again, making sure I'm putting the glue on the appropriate side so we don't have to peel it up and risk ripping our paper. All right, so now flipping it across, making sure they match up. as best as I can, kind of lining up where the beaks go together. Again, this is a glue stick, so you have a little time to work with it. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and rub it flat. So this will probably be as far as you guys get on your first day. Some of you may have taken the whole first class to sketch out your design, and that is okay. We want to definitely have as much done as possible in the first day, as close as we can to this spot. So that way the glue has time to dry. There's none of these little sticky bits left over, and we will have our Zentangle starting next. So do your best to get as far as you can to this step today. You want to have it all drawn out, cut, glued, and flipped. Next class, we're going to work on our Zentangles. All right, so for our next step, we are going to be working with Sharpies and rulers. This is a great opportunity before we get started. If your papers did not match up well, like you can see mine has just a little bit of blue, not enough to really worry about, but if you have a significant gap of color showing, take it over to our sub, let her help you use the paper cutter to cut it even. You want a nice, clean, even, matched up paper all the way around the edges. And using our regular Sharpies, the very first thing that we are going to do, we are going to go back and outline both sides for your animal. So I'm going to outline my toucan on this side, and I'm going to outline my toucan on this side. So while outlining over here on this side, it's kind of easier to just draw right on my blue paper on the colored paper. If it overlaps a little bit onto your white, that's okay. You can make this a thicker line. When I'm doing the outline on this side, I am going to be drawing again on the blue paper. If it overlaps a little bit up into the white paper, that is okay. So go ahead, finish outlining around. Remembering you want clean lines. So taking my time to really go slow, tracing back over it. Even if I feel like it needs a thicker line, I can come back and thicken it up. This is what's going to help make your paper look really neat and clean. So take your time doing the step. Don't rush through it. Now, a great tip is, let's say you accidentally have a hiccup. What if when I was tracing here, you could see I made it a little bit thicker because I made a mistake. What if my line would have accidentally run off? That is okay. It is okay to get in the white space because we're going to be adding Zentangles into our white spaces. Over here, you want to try your best to keep this blue side or your colored paper as clean as possible. If a little bit slips into your white though, that is okay. Because the next step is creating some straight lines with our rulers to create spaces where we are going to Zentangle. So I could always take this line and go ahead and turn it into one of my lines to start dividing out my space. Let's say I wanted to create a line that goes through here. Remember, I'm going to stop when I get to the colored spot, skip around. I don't want to draw in the blue. I want to leave the blue, the color spot, plain blue. So I'm going to go ahead and add in some lines on this side to create spaces where I will Zentangle. So I'm going to take my ruler, go ahead and line it up right down where that blue and white paper meets, or your colored paper and your white paper. I'm going to draw a straight line that divides the two. So I have a nice clean black line. And you can also do some shapes in here. I just use straight lines to get started, but let's say I also wanted to add in some circles or even rectangles. You can add in different shapes, and spaces will be created inside those shapes where we'll be Zentangling. Now, my suggestion is try not to create tiny little spaces. It will be difficult to Zentangle in those spots. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this one. I'm going to move over here to my white of my toucan, and I'm going to create some spaces inside here as well. I can easily fix up those little mistakes by turning them into spots. You can do the same thing. I accidentally made this look like a beak, and that actually looks really cool. I can use my ruler or freehand in some lines and shapes to start creating spaces for my Zentangle. So we're gonna go ahead and go through, add in some lines to create Zentangle spaces. And I'm gonna leave it just like this. I'm not gonna add in any more smaller spots. So now, using our idea sheet for some different patterns and designs, as well as
both regular sized and fine point Sharpies, we are going to go ahead and Zentangle in anywhere you see white space. So remember, when you draw with your Sharpies, you are only working in the white spaces. The blue should always stay blue, or the color you chose. So if you did green, you should always have green. If you have yellow, it should always stay yellow. Now, if you did have a few accidental little spots that came outside of your lines, it's okay, don't stress it, but definitely try your absolute best to go slow and keep these clean. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish Zentangling in my white spaces. And there we go. I have now completed my Zentangle on both my white toucan cutout over here and the white background all the way around the toucan. So now we have the completed 1, no tan, where we flipped our piece across our line of symmetry, 2, Zentangles, and 3, identifying our positive and negative space. Anywhere where I have Zentangles over here on this side is my positive space, my negative space being the bird, and then flip-flopped on the other side, I do have my positive space now being the bird as the main focus, and the negative space all around. I had a lot of fun teaching this with you guys and walking through this with you through YouTube, and I hope you guys have a great time. I can't wait to see these when I am back.